Eric, as the crisis deepens in Venezuela, President Trump says that he would consider military intervention, but not revealing the circumstances that would warrant it.
What would make you use the U.S. military in Venezuela? What's the national security
Well, I don't want to say
interest?
that, but certainly it's something that's on the, it's an option.
With more on this, let's bring in Dr. Rebecca Grant. She's a national security and military analyst as well as an international relations expert. Dr. Grant, always great to have you.
Hi.
Thank you. So President Trump saying a military intervention is not off the table. How real is that option and what would it look like?
Oh, definitely real option. So here's what he's saying. President Trump has been looking at military options probably for the last few weeks, prepared by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, but it's not what you think. The number one option is that U.S. Southern Command has increased its intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And then the bulk of the rest of the planning is about transporting humanitarian relief, airlift, sea lift. This is not the U.S. going it alone.
And President Trump imposed more sanctions on Venezuela's state-owned oil company to squeeze out Maduro. I mean, will he feel the pinch if Russia keeps giving Maduro huge loans?
Well, that's right, and Russia is such a complicating factor. So these sanctions are very appropriate. They sanction U.S. companies doing business with the Venezuelan oil giant. It takes time for the sanctions to work. But I thought what I see here is President Trump being very methodical as commander-in-chief. He doesn't want to say too much in advance of Monday's meeting of the Lima Group in Canada, where other Western Hemisphere nations are going to talk about what to do about Venezuela. But you can be sure that he is relying on military options that are able to tell him more about the status of the Venezuelan armed forces and pick up some intelligence that he can look at and also share privately with Canada and others as we watch to see what is going on and to see if there will be a chance to get in humanitarian aid and to keep Russia out.
Yeah. Because, well, first of all, the Venezuelan military was at first very much supporting Maduro, but now they're starting to peel away. And yeah, Russia always lurking. So how could the Kremlin cramp this situation, Dr. Rebecca?
Well, Russia always is looking for a chance to stir things up. They have been a big supporter first of Chavez and then of Maduro. They're a big investor in this area, and they are trying to build a case internationally that the U.S. is about to swoop in and intervene as if it was 1920. So Russia is stirring up the propaganda, and that's really contrary to the interests of Venezuelan people right now. Whereas we see the Lima Group, the U.S., Brazil, Canada, others trying to look for a way to let Venezuela's politics play out, but to have the humanitarian options ready to go and to keep a careful eye on the status of the Venezuelan armed forces.
Yeah, the U.S. is not trying to occupy Venezuela.
No.
What about the journalists that Maduro he's had arrested? 10 arrested, 6 of them were released, 4 deported, and the Maduro is also threatening Juan Guaido's wife. I mean, is he going to continue to get away with this?
This is terrible stuff, and there's a fear that Venezuelan special forces may be after the opposition. You know, when we're talking about a person here of the Guaido family, this is democratically elected, and the whole point is that we feel that Maduro was not democratically elected in the same way. So can he use that? And that's where some of our military surveillance is very important. If we don't see actual activity, then that tells Trump and other world leaders that maybe that Maduro is beginning to cave. On the other hand, it's a serious situation, and, you know, there's real concern for the safety there. But I think, again, our military options are looking at keeping an eye on it, finding the best diplomatic route, and preparing for humanitarian relief.
Maybe Maduro can live in exile in Russia.
Yes, right away. That would be great.
Finally, Dr. Grant, I understand that you say whatever move President Trump makes in Venezuela, he has to own it. Why do you say that?
It's unique, Arthel. This is the first foreign policy crisis that he can't say, hey, this was the Obama administration or something else. Conditions in Venezuela have been deteriorating for a long time, but this is Trump's chance to craft the response to this crisis. I see him being very methodical, very cautious, very involved. But whatever happens in Venezuela, the Trump administration owns it.
And is President Trump poised and ready to make the right moves here?
I see that very much. He was so careful in those remarks that he made. As I say, he will have very thoroughly looked at useful military options. He's clearly letting the Lima Group and the Western Hemisphere diplomats have a good run at this. And I think he's being very careful, very complex situation. But he knows what he stands for. He wants to see that peaceful transition, to keep Russia's interference to a minimum and prepare to have humanitarian relief go in. I think he's got a good hand on the tiller.
Finally, just tell us in summation, why should this matter to Americans watching this now?
Number one, we want to see a peaceful transition in this country. Another thing, the refugees, 3 million Venezuelan refugees, 290,000 came to America last year alone. We want to see peace in it. And most of all, Arthel, this is our hemisphere, the Monroe Doctrine. We want peace and no Russian interference in our hemisphere.
Absolutely. Dr. Rebecca Grant, thank you again.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.